And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, everybody. Eric Dim, your most complained cop, NYPD. This is New York's finest retired and filtered podcast with your 265 Police Live series. Of course, with me is the founder and the co-host of the podcast, John McCarry, retired lieutenant. What's up, brother?
Doing well, my friend. Doing well. A lot of things to talk about. We titled the episode "Why Law Enforcement Should Not Vote for Robert F. Kennedy," but I think that we should talk first about the incident that happened with Dana Ranchland. She's the founder of We Build the Block. So let's get into that a little bit first, and then we'll make our way over to Robert F. Kennedy and why he's no friend to law enforcement.
Well, absolutely. So Dana Ranchland, an article had surfaced in the papers, of course, and she alleges to be the victim of a sexual assault, actually a forcible rape. But what's extremely problematic about this allegation is, well, let's even backtrack and just give just to sum it up to a little bio about her. So she was working under Mayor Bill de Blasio, part of a program called We Build a Block, and she was part of the police reform movement even before the actual George Floyd riots. At this point, she had access to all the Brooklyn North precincts. She was pretty well known amongst the NYPD, and the cops of the NYPD actually had the perception that she was a cop because she had so much access to these precincts. She was very familiarized with Chief Jeffrey Mantry, Kaz Daughtry. She was in his office numerous times, working hand in hand with the police department, getting to know the commanders at different precincts. So at some point, she made an allegation that she was raped, and she brought it forward to Chief Jeffrey Mantry as her confidant, and to actually have this case investigated. So let's just jump into that, her interaction with Jeffrey Mantry and how this case unfolded.
Yeah, so she's a well-known community advocate. She's actually in-house with the NYPD, actually has an office in Patrol Borough, Brooklyn North. So not an office, but a desk. Apparently in Jeffrey Mantry's office, a desk inside of there. And like Eric said, she's so well-known that the cops think that she's a cop. That's how many people would see her in Brooklyn North. She would just walk in and out of precincts. So apparently after a police function, she notifies Jeffrey Mantry via text that, hey, listen, I've been the victim of a rape. And she didn't know what to do, but she didn't want him to find out about it secondhand and embarrass the police department or embarrass him. So he said, we're going to handle this. Apparently she had marks on her neck, and Mantry told her, no, like, we got to report this. Like, this guy can't get away with this. But what they did then is they set up a controlled call with her and the perpetrator. And by they, I mean Chief Jeffrey Mantry, Kaz Daughtry, and apparently another detective. Very not following protocol at all. And what happens is they present that case. Apparently at some point during the call, Kaz Daughtry says to her, we're good. Like, we got him. And she ends the controlled call. A controlled call is, obviously law enforcement is on the other end listening to the conversation between the victim and the perpetrator, right? Her and her perpetrator. When they present that case now to the DA says that control call was not done very well, and the evidence is very weak against him. And they don't know that they were willing to take the case, but they don't know that they'll actually get a prosecution. So Dana decides not to go ahead and pursue charges anymore. She drops the charges because she's afraid. I mean, it happens a lot with victims, and it's unfortunate. Eric, I'm just going to ask you, we were cops a long time, right? We were supervisors for probably longer than we were cops. You respond to a call of a sexual assault or a rape. How far are you taking that investigation as a patrol sergeant or as a preliminary responding officer?
Well, I definitely see where you're going with this. And that's a very, very simple question. Anyone that's doing patrol right now knows that it's very basic. When you're on patrol in uniform and you actually respond to a sexual assault, an allegation of a rape, your position is very minimal. You're going to ask basic questions: who, what, where, when, why, how. You're going to get that person escorted to the hospital immediately. The questions that you might ask are, do you have the clothes you were wearing when you believe you were raped, you might ask questions to find out how many hours have elapsed in the past, because that is something that you want to pass on to the doctor so they can determine what type of medical exam may be required. Was this person possibly drug induced? Was this person uh, raped? Is there semen, things like that? So that's something that you may want to ask. But as far as asking the details of the rape, you're not going to do that. You don't want to victimize this person twice. At this point, get the person to the hospital, very basic questions. This way you can inform the special victims unit to respond, give them some preliminary investigation so they can start looking at their computers and trying to get a little bit of a workup, respond to the hospital. And at that point, your job is going to end. Just basically, you have to make sure she's comfortable, she's safe. The doctors have been notified. Of course, the cops are there making sure that she's safe in a safe environment. And the special victims unit, the professionals, when it comes to this, will take over.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's exactly. I would never go in depth with any victims of rape. Who, what, where, why, and when. I wouldn't go into the nitty gritty details or notify special victims. One, because I'm not trained on how to deal with rape victims. That's one, right? We're not trained. None of us are. Just special victims, really. Just preliminary. You know, we don't want to make them feel more victimized, right? But we need to get the basic information enough that we could actually tell that something happened and have the professionals come in. And the other end of it is that they can build the proper case, right? Special victims is their niche, right? So they know what the DAs are looking for. What are the new trends in the criminal justice system? These are not things that a regular cop, and I don't care how many arrests you made, if you're a street cop, if you're a street goon, if you're a patrol cop, if you're in counterterrorism, you aren't, or wherever you are, you're not going to know the nitty gritty details of what those DAs are looking for in a rape case. So I think right off the bat, there's two things. You know, she alleges that they mishandled the investigation, which I'm going to say right now, they 100% did. It's an improper investigation, 1,000%. So they let a perpetrator remain on the street, a rapist remain on the street, and a victim not receive justice because of their improper investigation. But it could also be, she didn't allege this, but do they know who it was? That was not in the paper. And was this intentional? I don't know either way. Either way, I say it's completely unacceptable.
Well, just from hearing the story, it makes sense why she immediately went to Jeffrey Madry, who's the chief of the department. She's working in his office. She has a desk in the office. So obviously, there is a professional and personal relationship. She's there on a daily basis. She's part of police reform. They know her. She knows them. She probably felt comfortable. They have her phone number. And so she felt comfortable to confide, right? This is a very serious allegation to be a victim of rape. And I'm sure she figured she has access to the chief of the department. Who else would you notify? I mean, this is one of the top dogs in the police department. Who's going to handle your case properly? You would think it would be Chief Jeffrey Madry. So what I find extremely problematic, or what makes me curious in this case, and it's one of two things. Was this a calculated error, or was this just complete incompetence? Because it's obvious, as you said before, and I think that's a fantastic question that you asked, because any cop and any sergeant on patrol, just basic information, knows that when it comes to a sexual assault or rape allegation, that our professional business involved in it is very routine, it's very minimal. The professionals, which are the special victims unit, are going to respond. And obviously that would make sense. Again, I spent my entire career on the street, but I do not have the tools and the resources and the knowledge to conduct a special victims case. I would feel uncomfortable to do a control call or take these type of actions, because I would feel that I might destroy this case and not get this victim justice, because I don't know the details of it. I could easily make a mistake that screws up this case. And it's very important, with especially special victims cases, that they're thorough and detailed. And we all know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, me personally, just from reading the paper, I'll give my opinion. And my opinion is that egos over everything, like you always say, Eric. You know, it's egos over everything. So Kaz is at the top. I can handle this. I can do this. And he botches the whole thing. And then it leads to question that there's a chief. I believe he wasn't chief of the department at the time. He was chief of community affairs at that time, right? But still, doesn't matter, right? It doesn't really matter. You're a 3-star chief. You should understand the inner workings of the entire department. You should be able to fill any role at any moment at that. If you're at that level. So he oversaw it and he let it happen. So then it drives the question to me: should these people really be running the New York City Police Department at this point? Because I don't believe so. I believe that they deserve a major, major punishment for letting a rapist go free. This is more. It's more than just a mistake. It's egregious. It really is. So, like, to me, I don't believe that there was nefarious at play. I just believe the incompetence is so high and the ego is so high that it just leads to this type of incompetence and mistakes being made. And that I know everything and I don't need to do anything and I don't need to notify everybody.
Well, I think they ruined the entire case, right? I mean, it's so important that special victims cases are detailed and done properly, right? Because we have, at this point, we have an allegation. This person was not convicted, so we can't say that this person is a rapist, but we know that we have an allegation. So the actual investigation has to be conducted thoroughly and properly to make sure that all the proper steps to be taken. Because if the evidence does hold true that there was an actual rape, that this person actually gets convicted and prosecuted as appropriate, and if she recants her story and there's a lie, then we could actually prove that this person was innocent and that we could vindicate their name. So it's so important that this is done properly. So the idea that, again, and I'm so glad you said that because that's my opinion. It's egos over everything. The idea that they had the gall to actually take this case is absolutely ridiculous and absurd. When they know damn well that they're supposed to refer that to the special victims. Because if they actually cared about the victim, they would put aside their egos and say, you know what? Let the professionals that have the experience, they have the knowledge and the training to conduct these investigations. That's what good leaders do. We don't expect when you're in a leadership position that you know everything and you're the smartest person in the room. But what good leaders do is they use their resources properly. And that's what they were supposed to do. No problem. Jeffrey Madry, Kaz Daughtry said, no problem. You're making an allegation of rape. We will take care of you, and we will make sure that you're safe and that this case gets the proper and thorough, detailed investigation that is owed to you.
So with that being said, now again, she founded this organization, We Build the Block, and it's receiving a lot of support and a lot of stuff from New York City, especially the New York City Police Department. Obviously, like I said, she had a desk in there. And now the George Floyd incident happens and riots take to New York City. It's from the newspaper. It says that she was very critical of a certain Brooklyn North commander, Craig Edelman. I believe he was a deputy inspector at the time. He was in charge of the 73rd precinct. There was a video you guys may be familiar with. It was during the riots. A girl comes up and spits directly in a cop's face while he's walking with the CEO of his command, Craig Edelman, and they're walking. And the cop reacts, in my opinion, reacts properly, shoves her to the ground. But they keep walking, right? She's injured. It was a hard shove. She goes flying back. She does get injured. That's what happens when you spit on a cop, right? I mean, that's an assault. I mean, he's overcoming an assault right there. He's pushing her. He didn't punch her. He didn't kick her. He pushed her. She went flying. They leave. So what do you, before we even go further on that, let's just stop at that incident. What are your thoughts on that incident?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because in most cases, and I say most because not all, there's exception to every rule. In most cases, when there's force applied, we should make an arrest. Why? Because we want to make sure this person gets processed. We want to make sure that the cop is protected, that there's transparency when it comes to force, that this is played out in court. We also, of course, we want to maintain custody and safety of the perpetrator as well. However, I say in most cases, when it's feasible. But in a riot, especially the George Floyd one, most of the members of the police department, including myself, never took part in a riot until the George Floyd incident. Thank God it's not something that we take part in often. And those riots were completely out of the ordinary. It was volatile. It was a very hostile situation. So I think that has to be exceptions. You know, at this point, do I think that the arrest has to be made? In that situation, I believe I don't know what they were thinking. And, I saw some camera footage at the time, but you can't see the entire actual. You can't feel what they're feeling. It doesn't encompass it, and doesn't show justice video. But at that point, they may have felt that didn't want to lose the group that they were a part of. You're in a riot. Do you want to be sitting there just yourself and the lieutenant and make this arrest, and maybe you'll lose the group that you're a part of? So I can understand. I think there should be leniency in this of why they didn't make the arrest. And to be technical, is it a must arrest? It's not. Technically, it's not a must arrest situation.
So, I mean, listen, I think the push was fine. I have no issue with the push at all. I think the push is fine. I think every cop would do that, but I do think that he pushed it to the ground. She went flying back. I think you have to make the arrest. But I get it. It was a riot. That was, I believe it was the night where the 8-8 precinct was almost taken over. It could have been the night after. I don't remember, but it was a volatile situation. But any critic is going to look at that and say, well, you weren't in a volatile situation at that moment in time. So I think that it was a mistake. I don't think that it was a termination offense. I don't think it was something that egregious. But Dana did, I believe. I don't know exactly what she was asking for, but I think she was asking for Craig Edelman to be removed. So the coward Dermot Shea goes on Hot 97. The police commissioner who 1,000% supported defunding the police. The police commissioner who 1,000% stood behind an illegal, immoral mandate that basically left 10% of his department and got rid of 10% of the department and put it into the place it is now. So he goes on Hot 97. And, he's carrying de Blasio's water. He's there. He has a nice cold thing of water. We're doing a great job. Crime's down. Blah, 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 blah. Everybody loves us. I'm gonna take a knee. All my chiefs are taking knees. We're doing great. So he goes on Hot 97, and Ebro, who's one of the hosts of Hot 97, starts going in on the CEO of the 7-3, Craig Edelman. After that interview, Craig Edelman's transferred, right? Because Dermot Shea's a cop's cop. So he stood behind his people. And I believe they suspended that cop, and they may have even terminated him. I don't remember. But he's a cop's cop. And immediately after that, she receives a text from Marjorie saying, when Craig Edelman's name came up on that episode, we all know it was you. That wasn't a good move. And she was immediately barred from all Brooklyn North commands.
I remember the incident. I remember it went pretty viral. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty confident it was an anti-crime cop. And I remember the action that he took, I thought were completely appropriate, especially under the circumstances. Spitting on someone, especially someone in uniform while they're conducting official business, is absolutely an assault. It's vile. It's disgusting. Everybody knows. I would rather get slapped in the face than get spit on. It's just disgusting. I think the cop acted completely appropriate. I think there's different ways to skin a cat and different ways to look at it. Is it a mistake to not make the arrest? I don't believe it's necessarily a mistake. I think that's always the best option to make the arrest. And again, they could, critics could say it's not volatile at that situation. But again, I do believe that, especially a fluid situation with the riot. I was involved in the riots myself. It's constantly moving. You're part of large groups at this point. It's not just you and a lieutenant. At this point, you're part of a large group. You don't want to separate from that group because it could become a very dangerous situation. You could be lost in a swarm of agitators very quickly. Things are dynamic and constantly evolving. So I think it's also mass confusion. People don't talk about this, but the fog of war, and that's what goes on in this situation where decision making gets extremely dynamic, and you're not sure of the situation. It's not something we deal with on a daily basis. Thank God, riots aren't the norm. So I think because a riot is not the norm, I think that cops should be treated definitely with more leniency. Get the benefit of the doubt. This is not a normal situation. They're trying to maintain order. You have COVID going on. The politics are crazy. Even the leadership of the police department doesn't even know what to do themselves. They're bending the knee. They're not making decisive orders at this time. It's just complete chaos. And I do believe, I'm not sure. I do think he was terminated. I remember he was suspended. But again, I think it's completely egregious. And I think that her opposition to this case is absolutely ridiculous. But that doesn't give room for the treatment that she received in her allegation. Absolutely not.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100%, by the way. I don't think this kid should have been terminated at all or even suspended. I think it's a training moment. I think if we're going to look back on it, if they are going to receive discipline, it should be minor. Again, she assaulted him first. So he's defending himself at that point. Could we always do things better? Absolutely. So let's learn from every mistake. But again, Dermot Shea's a cop's cop. So that's what happened. So now after that, I guess she starts going hard on the New York City Police Department when I don't know if she's doing this on social media or out in the media. I don't know what's going on at this point. Again, this is all from 2 articles that we read in the New York Post, and I believe the other one was in the City, right? Or the Gothamist. There were 2 articles. One was in the Post. I'll post them both in the links below in this episode, wherever you watch or listen. And so we're getting all this from those articles. But apparently John Shell now has one of his underlings say, let her know that if she keeps it up, we'll embarrass her. Something along those lines. Let her know we have enough to embarrass her. And then the NYPD, she alleges, begins a smear campaign against her. And now she works heavily with other community partners and other community advocates. Other community advocates start hearing a rumor that she tried to get an innocent Black man arrested for rape. And she's alleging that that's coming from the New York City Police Department. She says she texts Jeffrey Madry, why is my name? You're the only people that know about my situation. Are you, Kaz Daughtry, and someone else? Why is everyone talking about this? How does anyone else know about this besides you guys? And his words back in a text, and she claims she has the text, is, I'll talk to John Shell and the guys, and I'll put an end to it. If it's them, I'll put an end to it. And then a few days later, he says it's over.
Well, just right there, right? Just the fact that there is communication and a conversation through text about the incident just clarifies that her story holds true. That they're aware of it. That he actually has to say that he'll put a stop to it. This is absolutely ridiculous and absurd. Everybody knows right now, if a woman walked into a precinct, right? You gave me that scenario. You responded to a call. How would you handle it? But if a woman walked into the precinct and said, I was raped, or there was some sexual assault or some allegation that she's making, the whole precinct would stop. The whole precinct would stop and say, hold on a minute. Stop. Don't even talk to her. Let's get her into a comfortable room. Immediately, special victims would be called. Again, those basic questions would be handled. Her name would not be on any reports. This would be extremely confidential. Everyone would be informed, right? Not to speak about, if you hear anything about any details about this alleged rape or sexual assault, you don't mention it to anybody. This is extremely sensitive material. Just to prove to the public how sensitive it is, anytime that we do reports, especially what the police department refers to as an unusual occurrence report, because it could be newsworthy, her name is going to be redacted from all this information. So the fact that they know this, and I think the story is true. I believe her. Why do I believe her? Because what do we see now? We see John Shell and the upper echelon of the police department attacking media on social media, just outright blatantly attacking them for giving their opinion. So here she was giving her opinion about the police department, and they attacked her. So obviously this is not something new. This is not a new phenomenon. It's new to us. John and I were attacked on social media from the upper echelon of the police department. But again, obviously this has been something that's going on with the police department for quite some time. They tried to smear us. They tried to smear Harry Siegel. They tried to smear Mike Colon from New Haven Podcast. And they tried to smear Dana Rachelin also, and tried to bury her alleged rape. Absolutely absurd and disgusting.
Yeah, he sent his CRT team after us because we're online. We run this podcast and we place a couple of memes about whatever's going on in the media. We basically just follow the media. We make memes and post them out on social media. And they send the captain, 2 lieutenants, their legal advisor, the team's legal advisor, and a bunch of cops and detectives to basically make up lies about us and to tell us to stop, or they're going to release all of this information that we've been filing complaints against cops and all this other stuff. And basically, like, same thing, like a smear campaign. So that's one. And then Harry Siegel's two, right? And then all of the other reporters, Errol Lewis, everybody else they're going after. And I believe that gives her the courage. The other thing, I believe her too. And the other reason I believe her is because I just think that the story, it's too intricate for it to not be true, for the parts of this to not be true. I mean, so John Shell tells her to stop. Her information about the rape gets leaked everywhere. And it's basically leaked that she tried to get an innocent black man locked up for rape. I mean, and I'm going to tell you right now, if it is true, I think every single one of them should be terminated. Anyone that even knew about it should be terminated, because you're slandering the victim of a rape. You victimized her once by not giving her justice because you're incompetent morons. Then you continuously victimize her over and over again every time that this incident has to get up. And now, today, she has to come out in the paper, and now everybody's talking about it, right? So she's victimized again. None of this had to happen. If it's true, they should all be terminated. But my feelings about it is they're all going to be indemnified by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And transparency isn't going to happen in New York City, because at the end of the day, this is what they do. This is who they are. They're immoral. They shouldn't be leading or managing a Dunkin' Donuts, never mind the largest police department in the world.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Excuse me. I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say this. I believe her story, again, because you and I would talk about this offline before we did the podcast. And it just, there's so much detail to this. It sounds like one of those movies you would see about a college university where they're trying to uncover rape. It just seems so outlandish, so ridiculous that it has to be true. However, even with that, I will say this. If her story was a complete lie, I still don't agree with what the police department is doing, especially with the upper echelon when it comes to John Shell and Kaz Daughtry botching the case and actually smearing her name. Because this is something I always learned throughout the police department, throughout my career. John, I know you learned this also, and every cop watches this knows this. We've always begged the question, and we've seen it. Unfortunately, we've seen it numerous times. We've all seen allegations of rape that turned out to be legit, and the perpetrator was brought to justice. But unfortunately, we've all seen stories that women have made allegations that weren't true, that they were lies, and that this person was just being accused. Maybe it was a divorce case, some type of custody case going on, or whatever the case is, and it was an actual lie. And even then, we were always told, because I would always ask, why aren't we arresting this person for falsifying a report? And I was always told, well, the reason why we don't arrest women when it comes to allegations of rape, even if they're false, is because we don't want to scare and intimidate other women from coming forward. So that's always been kind of an unwritten rule by the police department. So that's why I'll say, even if she's lying, the fact that they're smearing her name is completely absurd. I think that every one of them should be removed. And what's the best reflection of the future is what happened in the past. They're showing a pattern. We didn't know this before, but seeing that they smeared our names, they smeared these other journalists. To me, that's indicative that they smeared her name also. And everyone is independent from each other. It's obvious that they've been doing this for some time. How many other times have they smeared or threatened to smear other people's names that we don't know about? So if anyone's watching this podcast and you knew someone that was a victim of a smear campaign by John Shell or the other members of the upper echelon of the police department, reach out to us. We'd like to know your story.
Absolutely. And we won't tell anyone, even if you just want to let us know, because it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's the same thing, right? Her story is so intricate and so far-fetched. It reminds me so much of our story, because it's like, I'm like, if you just told someone this without us showing proof, they look at you like you're out of your mind. Oh, the New York City Police Department knows who you are. The New York City Police Department's coming after you. They sent their top team to try to stifle your First Amendment speech. Kaz Daughtry's giving speeches about you. Okay, guy. Police Commissioner Ed Caban sharing your memes and saying that they're the dream team up on other thing. Yeah, okay, guy. Nobody would believe it, and that's kind of why I'm saying, my personal opinion, I believe it happened, and I believe that they should be removed from the New York City Police Department. Not removed. I believe they should be terminated. They should be completely like for all the other stuff that they would have got terminated for that they didn't because they know Eric Adams. I think they should get terminated for this because he's smearing a victim of rape. And I mean, the Eric Adams campaign, the Eric Adams administration at this point is a disaster, especially in the New York City Police Department. Disaster. I mean, there's just article after article. It's insane at this point.
You know what's interesting also, right? You and I both kept saying when we were getting attacked by the upper echelon of the police department along with the CRT team, we both were saying, wow, look what they're doing. I mean, we're both retired members of the police department, we're lieutenants, so we didn't back down and we didn't show any fear because we understand the civil lines of the police department. We were embedded inside the police department as lieutenants, but both of us had almost 40 years combined of police work. But we both said, could you imagine? Imagine they smeared someone that wasn't a cop, what it would be like, how scary it could be. So, you know what? And sure enough, it held true. It's almost like this is the prequel to the movie, right? This actually happened before us. So we know we see a pattern. And it's interesting to see, right? Of course she's terrified. First of all, she's already been victimized. She's making an allegation of rape, whether it's true or not. I tell you what, based on the incident and all these factors coming together, I believe her. So she's already terrified. She's been the victim of an alleged rape. She brings it forward. That's already probably horrifying also that she has to tell this story to Jeffrey Madry. Obviously, she had some type of relationship, a professional relationship as well. She felt comfortable to tell him. And then he betrays her by giving this information to John Schell. It does be right. And they're smearing her name and they do a botched investigation. So here she is. She's making an allegation of rape. She's now betrayed. So of course she's terrified. So I can only imagine what they've done to other people. And again, Dana Rachel, if you're watching this, and if your legal counsel gives you the permission, come on this show. We'd love to talk about it and talk about how you had to defend yourself in the weight of the police department. It's absolutely absurd. And honestly, I'm with you. Not even removed. They should be terminated for this type of action. They cannot be trusted to the public. This is just like a complete smear campaign and intimidation. It's almost intimidation of a witness.
Yeah, and Eric Adams promoted all of them after this happened, and after people lied in front of a grand jury, just crazy. The records are all smeared, and it just came out. I think the Daily News just did an article on Tim Pearson, who's a deputy mayor, former disgraced inspector from the NYPD. And it says, embattled Adams advisor Tim Pearson became known as Crumbs. Listen to this. After telling cops he had to get mine, in quotations, on migrant contracts as per a new lawsuit. People are doing very well on these contracts. Where are my crumbs? Pearson allegedly said. This is the same Pearson that showed up in an NYPD jacket, demanded his way into a migrant facility, and then all we know is we still haven't seen the video, even though there's video of the incident. All we know is that two of the security guards didn't want to let him in. He supposedly flashed the bed and tried to walk in, and he choked and slapped one. That's alleged, but the security guards that tried to stop him got arrested. The NYPD came there and arrested them, and they're like, "Wait a minute, we didn't even know who he was, and he assaulted us." And there's video of it. Until today, we still have not seen that video because you know what that video is going to show? It's probably going to show what those security guards said. So these are the type of people that you know he has around him. Again, let's like Phil Banks, right? Under de Blasio. Ran out the door the minute he got appointed to the first step. Unindicted co-conspirator in a huge corruption case that really they tried to pawn off on lower-ranking members of the NYPD when it was really him and de Blasio that were the main players. So unindicted co-conspirator, he's now the deputy mayor of public safety. Tim Pearson's the deputy mayor of this. Kaz Daughtry, who's doing controlled calls, he has no idea what he's doing, is now the deputy commissioner of operations. He's running operations. He couldn't run a controlled call. He couldn't handle a scene properly. And Jeffrey Madry's the chief of department. It's an absolute disaster. Eric Adams is an absolute disaster.
Well, let's talk about that, right? So Kaz Daughtry and Jeffrey Maddrey took it upon themselves to do a controlled call for Dana Rachel to try to catch the perpetrator, right? It sounds great. To a layman's person, they might say, wow, these guys really took the initiative. But what does that say? This goes back to everything that we've been saying. Egos over everything. They let their egos trump the actual safety of this potential victim and actually impede on a thorough and detailed investigation, and possibly botch the entire investigation and never lead to justice and actually prosecution of this perpetrator if he is found guilty beyond reasonable doubt. That's what I've been talking about for the longest time: leadership. And the leadership is a complete epic fail of the New York City Police Department. When you're in a leadership position, you do not have to be the smartest, the best, or the strongest. What a good leader does is he or she knows how to use his resources or her resources in and around them. And a good leader would have said, you know what? Okay, you're making an allegation. You let us know. We're going to take care of it. We're going to contact the trained professionals. That's Special Victims Unit, and let them handle it. But no, their egos trump everything and said, we'll do it. We'll take care of it. And they botched the whole thing and screwed up the entire investigation. And she'll probably never see justice. And this alleged perpetrator, if he actually did it, is going to get away scot-free. What does that mean? He's going to do it again.
Absolutely. So let's move on. Let's move on to Robert F. Kennedy, right? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Let's go to, I'll read this off. So it's my contention that there's no way that anyone in law enforcement could vote for Joe Biden at all, right? But it's also my contention that nobody in law enforcement should vote for Robert F. Kennedy. So I'm gonna read this statement to you. Black Americans are going to be a principal priority for me, particularly in ending that fear of a dangerous interaction with law enforcement, Kennedy asserted. He also pledged a move to end qualified immunity, which protects police officers from personal liability in the event of a lawsuit. There is no incentives for individual to change behavior, Kennedy remarked. We need systemic changes. We need to remove qualified immunity, which make it necessary for any individual to consider his liability with every interaction. Every good economic system should incentivize behavior and punish bad behavior. We need to have that. Kennedy added, there's a need for a reorganization of police to understand the mission of protecting and serving instead of being in combat mode when dealing with Black communities. You're muted. You're on mute.
How about now? It's good?
There you go.
Okay. You know, it's interesting to me that he's trying to paint the narrative that, you know, the police are some type of villain. Again, he's demonizing the police. He's villainized the police department, and yet he's not even gotten in office yet. And yet we already have all this legislation enacted for police reform. And what has it done? It's created a lawless society, a criminal-first society, and victims have become second. And we're going to create this idea that police should not be in a combat mode when it comes to Blacks. So we're already creating a divide amongst Black and white Americans, amongst Blacks and the police department, which is completely in opposition from studies that we know. We had a gentleman on here that wrote a book who actually had factual data, right? That in most cases, and more often than not, whites throughout the country are shot and killed more often than Black adversaries. So this completely debunks his ideology here. And now when we go into talking about qualified immunity, I always say that intrusive police work is the bedrock, the foundation to public safety, to curbing crime. And if you remove qualified immunity, you remove intrusive police work.
Oh, I don't even think I think qualified immunity, forget intrusive police work. I think qualified immunity equals abolish the police, right? Because under Eric Adams, qualified immunity goes when you and your friend sexually assault people and smear people, that's when cops get qualified immunity under the Eric Adams administration. But that's not what qualified immunity is for. And it's not even written for that. It's written for when you act properly within the scope of your duty. Sexual assault is not acting properly, nor is it in the scope of your duty. Now, if you're a police officer and you're going to effect an arrest and a woman alleges that you did something while effecting that arrest, that would fall under qualified immunity. Oh, he touched my breast. He touched my butt. He stuck his finger here as you're arresting and she's resisting. That could potentially, that would fall under qualified immunity, but not a sexual assault allegation off duty, right? What qualified immunity does is protect you from any job that you go to, a 911 call, an aided. Let's say you're the sector assigned to that call. Precincts are broken down in sectors. You're Sector Eddie. You're in the 120 precinct. You get a call for an aided call, and you're already on a call for something else, and it takes you 15 minutes to respond there. And by the time you get there, person's gone in the hospital. You go to the hospital to see what's going on. Person's dead. Family sues the New York City Police Department. They said you took too long to get there. You don't have qualified immunity. Guess who's paying for that lawsuit? If when you're deemed, and by the way, New York City doesn't fight anything, so you're going to pay out of your own pocket a lot of money, probably your entire life savings, and stuff you didn't even get yet, you didn't even obtain for. You'll pay for the rest of your life for that one job. So you end qualified immunity, you end any and all protections for law enforcement. So it equals abolish the police. To me, forget intrusive police work. If there's no qualified immunity and you're a cop, you should never own anything. You should never have a dollar in the bank. And you should just basically be rogue. You should be a sovereign citizen, like we talked about, because you're never going to have anything. You're going to owe people money the rest of your life. The rest of your life, you're going to be paying money. You're never going to have a dollar to yourself, and you're still going to owe money.
You're absolutely right. And so I don't know if the public completely understands. If anybody's watching this, qualified immunity was actually administered to protect the police department from frivolous lawsuits, right? It was obvious. It was obvious that there was too many frivolous lawsuits and just impeding the police department from doing their job. So obviously they need protections. There's qualified immunity for medical professions also, right? Qualified immunity so you can actually do your performance of duty. What is qualified immunity? It's protection for local and government workers so they can actually do their job. However, what the public doesn't understand, even with qualified immunity, if you take action in discretionary police work and you violate someone's civil rights under the U.S. Constitution, you're not getting qualified immunity. You're not going to be protected. So I that's why I don't understand what this big push is. But what's interesting when we see the correlation, I always say, if you look at my record of my career, if I retired before 2018, there would be an article saying that, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, that I was a hero, did great police work, had very minimal civilian complaints. The ones I had were a byproduct doing special operations work. But 2018 till the end, which I retired September 2022, was a complete spin. So you can see, and it's the same thing as it's because of legislation that was enacted, the subpoena power, the change of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, the City Council. But what do we also see? I think it was August of 2018, there was a push to try to change qualified immunity and to have it completely removed. So we can see 2018 is really like a pinnacle year when it comes to police reform. And this is even prior to the actual George Floyd incident. The George Floyd incident was just the straw that broke the camel's back, figuratively speaking here. But 2018 is when there was this hard push to remove qualified immunity. And you know what? I'm glad that you said that. I actually agree with you. If you remove qualified immunity, you're actually moving to removing the police department altogether. Because now you don't have any protections. Those protections allow you to do your job. Because qualified immunity is really meant to protect you because you're doing discretionary type of work. In most cases, yes, you're called to a 911 call. But when police officers take action, it's discretionary. It's all subjected on what you think you should do. So that's why qualified immunity protects you. Same thing with medical professions. They have to make subjective decisions on what they're met with, on what they have in front of them. Unlike, if you're a mechanic, you'll fix a carburetor, you fix a fuel injector, you fix a tire, fix brakes. It's always the same way. But being a police officer, your job is so dynamic. It's always changing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's qualified immunity. It's in basically every profession, right? Whether you work for a company or you work for a private organization, if you're working on behalf of that company or that organization or that public good, you will be protected from while you do your job in the course of your duties, the things that administer, not the Adams version of qualified immunity, the actual version. The Adams version of qualified immunity, by the way, is illegal, but he controls corporation counsel. As you've seen, he just pushed out the other corporation counsel lady, and now he's replacing her. He's trying to replace her with Rudy Giuliani's former prosecutor, I believe. I forget who it was, and city council's pushing back on that. So he wants people that are favorable to him, that are going to give him qualified immunity for him and all of his financial and legal troubles that he has outside of him doing his own work. So, I mean, I think that it just stems. Listen, Robert F. Kennedy is a very rich man. I don't believe he has the understanding of police work. I don't believe he has the people around him that understand police work, particularly Tramiel Thompson, who hasn't been on the show, but we will have him on soon if he comes on. I was on his show twice. He also said that he would have Eric on, and we will see that. But I don't believe that he's well-versed in policing. And I believe a lot, the article that Eric was talking about, I'll post in the link. I'll post in the link below. And basically he was meeting with the black press. I don't know what the black press is, but I guess press that is set up more towards black Americans, right? So he met with them, and I believe it was a pandering statement from a rich man who doesn't understand policing and hasn't really thought it out well. And he's also under the assumption that police officers, he's speaking under the assumption that police officers are bad actors most of the time, and we need to incentivize good behavior. I believe he has it completely mixed up, and we need to incentivize good behavior inside of our communities by not demonizing our police and actually turning it on its head and holding individuals who commit criminal acts accountable for their actions, regardless of the color of their skin.
You know, it's interesting that you said this, right? Because I always make this correlation that the advocates, the anti-police rhetoric, the sentiment that we get, these reform, these activists that are just anti-police, who do they always attack? They attack the boots on the ground. Why? Because they're tangible. They can actually get to them. They can actually affect their careers. They can affect their lives with public record, the 50A, with lawsuits. But ultimately, who they should be attacking is the agency, the leadership. And that's what they don't understand with qualified immunity. Qualified immunity protects the police officer so that they could do the job on behalf of that organization. So if someone makes a lawsuit against a police officer, if that police officer is found not acting appropriately and there is wrongdoing, it does not protect the agency. The agency will still have to pay on behalf of that police officer. And then if that agency determines that that wrongdoing was accurate and met the parameters also with their investigation, well, then they'll be disciplined. It could be termination or whatever the discipline is. So it will be dealt with. That's why I don't understand this push to remove qualified immunity and to have the police officers affected themselves. How are you going to make changes when you're not holding the agency accountable? You're holding each individual police officer accountable. If there is a bad actor, we should be looking at the agency. How did this person get hired? How did this person get to this point? What is going on with the leadership that we have this bad actor? Because for the most part, the police department polices their own. And there's not that many bad actors. They're painting this false narrative. It's completely ridiculous. And I think that no cop should be backing RFK based on that and many other factors. But removing qualified immunity is dangerous to this country, dangerous to public safety.
Yeah, and and I have a lot of friends that are RFK supporters, a lot that are actually working in his campaign, right? I've been on his children's health defense several times, right? But I'm here to say I support him in some stances. I support his medical freedom stance, but I do not support him in any way in his law enforcement stance. And I think it's a far left dangerous stance. I really do. I believe it's a very dangerous stance. It goes beyond defund the police. It goes beyond removing authority from police officers, beyond emasculation. This would be the end of policing as we know it. You basically be highly paid security guards. Cooler uniform, you get to carry a gun, but you'd be security guards because you would have you wouldn't be able to do your job. And even when you do, you're going to have serious civil liability on you, more than brain surgeons, more than a heart surgeon, more than a pediatric doctor, anything like that, where they get sued all the time. Like, you will be sued all the time and you will be held personally responsible. Now, again, just to back up on qualified immunity, if you are a bad actor, you will not receive qualified immunity as it stands right now. The agency is not going to indemnify you. Yes, Eric's 1,000% correct. The city will still ultimately be responsible for hiring you, but you will also be responsible too. And no one's arguing that, right? If you acted without the scope of your duties and you did something crazy, like Eric Adams or like any of his cohorts are alleged to have done, if those things are proven true, then there's no reason that New York City should be held liable for this. They should have to pay for this themselves. Or even if New York City is held liable for it, they should also be able to pay, because why are they unaccountable and rogue? And I understand that argument. But to say we're going to remove it, to say that there's a rift in law enforcement with the Black community, I believe it's a lie. I honestly do. There was an actor, his name was Alan Richer. He said police murder people all the time and get away with it. And a lot of people sent me a quote from Edwin Raymond, who responded to him and basically saying that you didn't say anything wrong by you're just speaking your truth, and good for you, King. And I responded to Edwin Raymond and I said, this is absolutely a falsehood. So far this year, there's been 42 police officers murdered. I believe there's over 124 shot already this year. So the only thing that happens I see all the time is that cops are getting killed and cops are being assaulted and cops are being shot. I see that happen all the time. I don't see cops killing Black people all the time and getting away with it. I don't see that.
Well, absolutely not. We could actually, if we were to make the comparison, right? The FBI does statistics. The FBI does statistical analysis based on crimes per capita. So if we actually looked at crimes, or we could actually look at how many police officers are shot and killed in comparison to how many police officers there are patrol the streets of America, the numbers are far worse than if we actually compared how many people in America are shot by the police in comparison to how many Americans there are in this country. There's approximately 330 million American citizens in this country. How many people are actually shot and killed by the police in a year, answering millions and billions of calls, in comparison to 42 police officers that you just gave that number being shot, and how many police officers there are? There's a huge discrepancy in these numbers, and we know the narrative is just to paint the picture that the police departments throughout the country are just demons, evil, they're complete villainized. Why? Because again, it goes back to what we've been saying. It's about abolishing the police, about this whole new world order and this whole woke progressive ideology. We see artificial intelligence taking over. They're trying to remove the human element. And ultimately, it's odd that people are actually trying to remove the police officers because they want less government. And yet, with this artificial intelligence, we're getting more government. We're becoming this police state. I just think it's complete insanity. And what's also important to note, I think it's quite interesting, because I'm sure we'll probably get some backlash if people say, oh, you're picking on RFK. I'm sure there's people that are fans of RFK. We're not saying that everything that he does is something that we don't agree with. It's the same thing goes for Donald Trump. People say, oh, you're a MAGA guy. You know what? There's a lot of things that Donald Trump stands for and supports and actually enacts that I actually agree with. But there's plenty of things that Donald Trump does that I'm not in agreement either. But as a whole, if we look at as a whole, the majority of the stuff he does would be better for this country and better for law enforcement than RFK. So I think that RFK has done some great work in his life and his tenure when it comes to social reforms. But when it comes to the police department and public safety, I think he's missing the mark, and he's trying to pander to the Black community, the Democratic Black community.
I agree. I mean, I think that he has the same stance as Alan Rick. Cops kill people all the time and get away with it. And I think it's a complete lie. I think it's a complete lie. I think he's working off that, and he's pandering to the black community. And I mean, to me, Donald Trump is the clear choice. The number two issues, I think, for me and everybody I see and everybody I know, crime and open borders. There is absolutely no way to solve either of those with an emasculated department who has no protections to go out and do their job. So it's an abolish the police stance. It's a far left stance, and it's a danger, especially at this time. At the number one issue, you're missing the mark totally. At the number one issue, you're missing the mark. You're bringing a toothbrush to a gunfight, and you don't even know what you're talking about. So that's why. So, RFK, if you're listening to this, RFK, all your people, feel free, come on and talk about us. But that's got to get cleaned up immediately, because that is horrible. I tweeted about it a couple of times, like a couple of months ago, but I don't think it really was highlighted. And now that we're getting closer to election season, to me, for law enforcement, Donald Trump is the clear choice. If you're not voting for Donald Trump, in my opinion, you're not smart. You're not smart. You're a cop. You support law enforcement. You want the border closed. You want crime to go down. Donald Trump is the clear winner. I mean, he is the clear guy. He supports law and order in this country. And Harlem even knows it. Harlem is MAGA country. Harlem in New York City is MAGA country. Right? Watch a video that we just posted. We just put it out. We collaborated on it. He goes into Harlem, Donald Trump, and the organic love from the community. It's there. People see it. He's a genuine guy, and everybody sees it.
Well, that just shows that that the black community supports Donald Trump because it makes sense, and that's why I think that people like RFK and Joe Biden, they're using the black community to create this division. They're using them, and they're using them in a bad way. And they're the ones that are demoralizing their communities, destroying their communities, because they're using them for their own benefit, for their own movement. It's just a complete insult to the black community. And I'm glad to see that a majority of the black community and many of these black communities throughout the country, we're seeing it, are emerging, and they're standing up and they're supporting Donald Trump, because they see through the bullshit and they're tired of the nonsense, and they see that they're being used and completely manipulated. Sad to see it. If anyone is showing racism and just complete bias, it's the Democratic Party. And I mean, I've heard stories how Donald Trump throughout his life, had friendships with different actors and all these. Even the people from The View, I heard they had pictures with Donald Trump from years ago, supporting him and saying that he was, pretty much a man of the people, got along with all different types of walks of life. But all of a sudden, because he doesn't fit their narrative, he doesn't fit their agenda, they're trying to paint him as this racist. But absolutely, if you're in law enforcement, it's a no-brainer. He is your man. He is your choice. Mayor Eric Adams said it himself. The key to prosperity for New York City is public safety. And what's at risk right now for this entire country? It's public safety. We see it in New York. We see it in California. We see it in Chicago. We see it even in Texas. We just see cities that are just crumbling, decimating. Most of these democratic cities, it's because of this complete lawlessness, the legislation they've enacted. And what is it ultimately about? If anyone has an opportunity, please check out the last episode we did, Why No Cop Should Work Alone. There's a segment there. I think it's great. It's about 28 minutes in, where John talks about transparency. We hear the whole country talks about transparency, but the only transparency that we see is the view of the police officer. How about the view of the perpetrators? Why aren't we looking to see and put blame on the criminals that are out there, but instead we put the blame on the police officers?
Yeah, so I think we beat Robert Kennedy up enough. But that's just how I feel. I don't feel that he's qualified to be the president at this point. If those issues aren't top, if crime and public safety isn't the top, and in order for you to achieve crime and achieve to drive down crime and achieve public safety, it's to continue to go after the cops like we did in 2020. Missing the mark, guy. To trade that toothbrush in, go to a gun store. Because you need it, man. Because I'm telling you, it's bad. You need to speak to some cops. If you want to talk to me and Eric offline as well, we're willing to do that. I'm not writing anything down. We could just talk, right? You don't need a whole essay. You could talk to us like humans. Pick up the phone. But that's where I'm at this point. Donald Trump, you're in law enforcement. Donald Trump's your guy. Crime's down. Crimes down across the country. Crimes down in LA, crimes down in San Francisco, crimes down in Chicago, crimes down in New York City. So New York City mayor tweets 6 hours ago, shooting March crime stats, shootings down 26%, transit crimes down 24%, homicides down 19%, burglaries down 17%. Sam Antar, who we had on, that episode's going to release before this one does. He tweets this at him. Oh, bravo, New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Once again, you dazzle us with your selective number showcase, reminiscent of a crazy Eddie CFO cooking the books to defraud investors. But oh dear, it seems a few pesky details slip through the cracks. Let me enlighten you. Robberies have a modest uptick of 4.3%. Barely noticeable, right? Question mark. Felony assaults are enjoying a 1.9% growth spurt. Major felonies, they're up a cozy 2.4%. Rape and sex crimes decided to join the party too with a 1.2% increase. Misdemeanor assaults, question mark. Oh, they're thriving, a whopping 7.6% leap. All violent crimes, whether they're felonies or misdemeanors, are up 4.6% year to date. But who's counting? And let's not forget the grand finale. Since the Hakelon days of 2019, violent crime has skyrocketed by 29%. Since you graced the office in 2022, it blossomed by 21%. Now about those shooting statistics. You're so fond of quoting, they're as meaningful as a chocolate teapot. A shooting is only tallied when a bullet has the courtesy to meet its target. Are New Yorkers supposed to feel safer because shootings are down? In the latest year on record, crimes involving any kind of firearm outpaced actual shootings by a ratio of 7-1. And while shootings took a 17% dive, gun-involved crimes had a 15% surge. But surely that's just a minor detail in the grand scheme of public safety. What do you think about that, Eric?
Well, as you said, we had Sam Antar on the show. It will come out this Sunday, which will be before this episode. I'm fascinated with his obsession with numbers. He has such an intelligent mind. And it's just amazing. And what's interesting about this, the public has to understand, he's not manipulating the numbers of the NYPD. He's using the NYPD's own stats to show that they have manipulated the numbers and that they're deceiving the public. And what do we hear? John Shell and Kaz Daughtry were on Fox News this morning as we speak, talking about perception versus reality. Perception versus reality has not stopped. That's all we hear. And yet the numbers are far up. It's just a complete deception to the public that they keep lying to the public, telling them crime is down. They don't have to tell you crime is down or crime is up. You see it yourself. Everyone sees it. If you're out there in New York, John went to New York last year, and he can feel it. You can see it. And here we are almost a year later. I could tell it's far worse from what we see. We watch news. We speak to different independent sources that are still in New York City. I speak to my mother. She's still in New York City. She just tells me it's a complete nightmare. And then you could feel it on a daily basis. So it's not just perception versus reality. It is reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was there this year, by the way, too. So, and I'll be back in a month. So, but yeah, no, New York City is so like what he's misrepresenting. Eric Adams is misrepresenting the crime statistics, right? He's picking out where the victories are, which we like to call cherry picking in law enforcement, cherry picking numbers. But he's not giving you the actual facts. Crime's up, crime is down, right? As Sam Antar clearly pointed out. So I retweeted Sam Antar and I asked for a misinformation check in aisle 5 since they're so big to come back and combat misinformation and the hard work of the men and women in the New York City Police Department. But to date, no one responded. I don't think they will either because they didn't respond when we actually told them that crime was up for 2023 and to stop lying about it. But they haven't stopped lying about it, and they didn't respond to that crime was up in 2023 either. So not only are they misrepresenting again this year, they're continuing to lie about the numbers last year. So again, these are the people that are in charge of New York City. Crazy, crazy times. I mean, I think honestly, I hate to see Eric Adams leave because I mean, it's just a treasure trove of content. The administration, every person he has appointed is incompetent. He's incompetent. And I mean, as much as everyone's suffering, and he's causing me great suffering, and you suffering, and Sal Greco suffering, and thousands of others, great personal suffering. I mean, there's a lot of entertainment here. There's a lot.
You know, it's funny you say that, right? We talk about the circle that he surrounds himself with, and it's interesting. So it's a bunch of incompetence, but at the same time, it's, you know, we were using this terminology earlier. It's a bunch of useful idiots. It seems like it's calculated errors. Like, these are calculated mistakes, because why else would you put these people in your circle? You know, why would you put Kaz Daughtry as the deputy commissioner of operations and almost the police commissioner? Why would you put John Schell, who had an accidental discharge, you know, as the chief of patrol, who goes out there like a total cowboy? Why would you put Chief Madry that has, I mean, he's got more lives than a cat. He's had more discipline than anyone on this job as the chief of department. And it just, the people that he surrounds himself with, Tim Pearson, just all dubious characters. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. That's why I say it's either incompetence or it's calculated error. And sometimes it appears to be a calculated error to me, because at some point you would have to look at this and say, wait a minute, this is not flowing properly. Like, we need an overhaul here. But no, we don't see any change. It just keeps going and going, and we're watching an epic fail.
Me personally, I think that they're useful idiots. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna point to something that happened yesterday. Golden Gate Bridge gets taken over by pro-Palestinian protesters. Chicago O'Hare Airport gets taken over by pro-Palestinian protesters. At the same time, Brooklyn Bridge gets taken over by pro-Palestinian protesters. And yes, did the NYPD restore public order? But yes, after the protesters left. Some of the protesters were arrested. The rank and file did a great job. So I tweeted about the Golden Gate Bridge. I said another planned, coordinated, strategic attack. Planned, coordinated, strategic shutdown of critical infrastructure. When will we arrest the organizers of these events? Then I did the same thing for O'Hare. But then I got busy yesterday. I was running around all day. And then Kaz Daughtry tweets, yet another planned, coordinated attempt to shut down critical infrastructure in New York City. Lie. They shut down that Brooklyn Bridge. People were stopped on that. They shut it down for a period of time. Right. And again, so I retweeted to him. I didn't point out the fact that he's completely obsessed with my Twitter and he uses word for word the things that I do. But I just said, so when are you going to lock up the organizers of these events? Summer is coming. What are you waiting for? And to me, the same way that he botched that controlled call, he got promoted. He runs the police department. He's botching this. He's not seeing the big picture. I hope that tweet woke you up, Kaz. I hope you thought in your head, why aren't we locking up the organizers of these events? These are planned, coordinated shutdowns simultaneously, nationwide, critical infrastructure in the United States of America. New York City is the #1 terrorist target in the world. To me, every day, what I see intel gathering missions. I want to see how the police department's going to respond, what they're going to use, how long it's going to take them, what comes on, what happens, how do they restore it, what's the before, what's the after, what does it look like, and they're learning from these. Eric, what do you think about what's going on every day in New York City?
Dude, I'm so happy you just said that, man. You know what? I am so glad you said that, because I've been thinking that this whole time. I think I mentioned this months ago. I was saying to you, like John said, we both believe that these are orchestrated attacks, that they're orchestrated events, that they're pretty much dry runs. They're studying. This is not the real event. This is just this is a little show here and there. Let's do study and analysis right now, seeing how incompetent the police department is, how the police department moves, how they conduct business. How long does it take that they actually take action? When do they actually make arrests? What actually sparks deployment? And when the police department deploys, what type of equipment do they deploy with? How much personnel? And this is not just on a local level. This is happening on a national level. There's no coincidence that it's happening on all these bridges at the same time. And if anything I learned in the Marine Corps when it comes to terrorism, that terrorists do their homework. They study and they analyze and they do dry runs and dry runs after dry run before the actual event. So it's everything right now is pointing in the direction. It's indicative that this is a dry run and they're doing their analysis. And the police departments are failing immensely. It's terrible. The police departments, and strategically, you see the cities that they're picking. They're picking these democratic cities that are just completely lawless, that fell apart to legislation by politicians that have eaten these cities from within. LA, Chicago, San Francisco, New York, they're all on par with each other, all democratic cities. And you know what you're going to hear from Mayor Eric Adams? Oh, it's because they're black mayors. They're picking on black mayors. No, they're picking on democratic cities that have the same legislation, the same politics. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think that we are headed for some real troubles as we get closer to the election. And again, that's why I say when it comes to Mayor Eric Adams, is this calculated error or is this incompetence? Because for him, I would say this is a calculated error. Purposely, you having these useful idiots that he knows their egos are over everything. They're trying to accomplish a mission themselves, and they're just putting a Band-Aid on it. They're not attacking the organizers. How do you remove the body to something? You cut off the head. But that's not what they're doing. They're just putting a Band-Aid on. Oh, we cleaned it up for the night. And they're just seeing the short game. They're not seeing the long game.
Absolutely. The other thing I keep asking, because these are highly funded protests, right? We've seen Black Lives Matter. We've seen Antifa. We see all the usual players that are getting paid for these not-for-profits and all these other community organizations. Who is paying these protesters to go out there and perform shutdowns of critical infrastructure in New York City? And ultimately, it's going to come back to you, the taxpayer. You're funding these protests. You're also funding the response to the protests. You're also funding the lawsuits that are going to rise from the response to the protest. So you're just getting it every which way you can, right? So why not go after the organizations that are funding them, remove the funding, remove the government funding, the taxpayer funds to these organizations that are giving it to protesters to go out and shut down and perform shutdowns of critical infrastructure in New York City. Remove that funding and charge these organizers properly. And I believe the proper charge for that is terrorism, because what they're doing is they're shutting down critical infrastructure to instill fear, to reach or further a political aim. And that is the definition of terrorism. So this isn't hard, guys. This isn't hard. You know who it is. They're out there every day. I can tell you when the protest is going to pop up. They say it on social media. Everybody knows. Everybody knows what's going on. They know who's involved, who's behind it, but they're unwilling to do it. Like Eric said, you go for the head. But instead of going for the head and stopping it all, what do? They just chase around the tail. And that's what they're doing. And honestly, Eric, I got to tell you right now, I think Eric Adams is a useful idiot too. I do. I think he's incompetent. He doesn't like to be called incompetent. And yes, you're right. What do those mayors have in common, all three of them? They're all black. But also, what are they? They're incompetent and they're dumb. And that's the biggest coincidence. And that's why it's happening in these cities, because in those cities, it's allowed to happen. And that's why we see it there.
Oh, you're spot on. You nailed it. Absolutely. Eric Adams will easily twist it and put the spin on it that it's it's about division, it's about attacking the black mayors, but absolutely, it just happens to be that they're all useful idiots themselves, and the Democrats have put them there. They just happen to be black, pandering, but they put dumb idiots there so that we have complete lawlessness. We could tear down the police departments throughout the country. We could have a lawless society and go back to this new world order and just become a complete police state. It's about control. It's absolutely ridiculous. Again, they could easily cut off the funding. They could cut off the heads. We have the New York City Police Department. The New York City Police Department has such an amazing intelligence bureau, social media scrubs that they could do. They could get all this information, shut it down rather quickly. They could make arrests before it ever happens. This could have been shut down October 8th of 2023, right after the incident in Israel. But we've allowed this just to go on for almost 6 months now. It's ridiculous. What are we, 6 months in? It's insane.
Yeah.
And we just keep putting band-aids on it. That's why I say Eric Adams himself, is he incompetent or is he just is it a couch?
Oh, I think we just lost Eric. Eric, we just lost you. But just to go on what Eric was saying, we lost you for a second, Eric. Sorry.
Sorry. But even I'm saying, right? So Eric Adams is a complete incompetence, or is he a useful idiot for someone else? Because why wouldn't you try to combat the protest settlement agreement? The protest settlement agreement that was enacted by the New York City Council creates so many obstacles for the police department to shut down these actual protests and riots when they happen. It almost seems like it's done on purpose so that the police department cannot be effective to allow these riots to fester. You know, and what do I see the police department? They go on, they put band-aids. It's almost like they light their feet on fire to keep their hands warm. They're not getting to the root of the problem. Just completely absurd.
They're racing to make the new most complained cop and hoping that he starts to Get Stuff Done podcast so that they could combat this one. So that's what that is. But I personally think the guy's a moron. You know, Sal Greco put out a clip. He collaborated with us. He was kind enough to put the New York's Finest logo on top of the Sal Greco Show 2 logo on it, and he put out a clip of Eric Adams, and it was from a media press briefing from yesterday, and the press asked him, how do you reconcile the advocate, the community advocate, Eric Adams, with the pro law enforcement Eric Adams? Now, I don't think he's pro law enforcement at all. So I'm just going to get over. That's just the charade he plays. And what his response to that is that was me, and that's who I am. But right now, he doesn't say I changed, I learned. He doesn't say any of that. He says right now, I got to oversee the whole city. So I got to oversee the police department. I got to protect them, and I got to protect the city. So what he's saying is he's nobody. He's whoever he needs to be. He doesn't really have a stance. He was never even a community advocate either. He doesn't care. It was all to further his own political career. He'll say and do anything. He supported Rudy Giuliani. He was against Rudy Giuliani. He doesn't like Rudy Giuliani. But yet the only thing he could ever go to is anything that Rudy Giuliani's ever done, right? When crime spikes, he installs broken windows. When he gets into legal battles, he starts picking up Rudy Giuliani's people. So, I mean, the guy wants to be Rudy Giuliani, but he's not smart enough, and he doesn't have the spine or the courage enough. To me, he's incompetent. He's a useful idiot. And, I'm not going to sit there and say, I told you so. And I don't think Eric is either. But I'm saying right now, it's not if, it's when. Because the incompetence, everyone sees it. It's not just us. It's not just this podcast. It's the rank and file. It's the average citizens on the street. It's the people of Harlem, right? The people of Harlem are seeing it. They want this country to return to a norm. They want law and order on the streets. They want to feel safe, and nobody feels it under this administration, under Joe Biden, under Eric Adams. They're not going to feel safe with Robert F. Kennedy. Donald Trump's your guy, and we need another Rudy Giuliani style mayor. We do.
You know, what's funny, not to get totally off topic, but it's interesting. You just mentioned about getting Giuliani's staff when it's, when it feeds his needs. But it's quite interesting, right? That we've seen the men in the leadership of the NYPD, different agencies of New York City, just completely fail and just completely cower, especially the New York City Police Department, right? That's a forte. But the leadership of the NYPD is predominantly men, and those men have been nothing but weak and cowards. And we've seen some guts by some women in this administration, right? Keishan Sewell, she refused to be a puppet, and she left. And now we have also his attorney. She refused to be a puppet. So I have to say, hands down, some of these women have showed a lot more strength than the men that are supposed to be masculine of the police department.
Well, I listen. I think that Keishan Sewell exhibited some strength when she left because God only knows. We don't know why she left. I personally believe there was a lot of things, not just that she had no power. I believe there was a lot of things that she was not comfortable in being a part of. And I think that'll come out at some point, it hasn't come out now. And I don't know. I would hope to see it, and I would hope to hear it from her own mouth. If not, then I'll say she's a coward, right? Because again, I believe that she made the same choice that I made, except she fired cops for making the same choice that she made, right? So I believe she's a coward for that reason. I applaud her for running away and getting away from it and stepping down, but I think she's a coward for not saying anything. Maybe she'll prove me wrong, maybe she won't. But as of right now, I'm not with her. And then the corporation counsel lady, she said that they were representing Eric Adams for a sexual assault case that happened off duty in 1989. That's ridiculous. So I don't believe it was her either. So God only knows what else he was asking her to do, because she went along with that, and she should have never went along with that. So God only knows what else is being asked behind the scenes.
I have to agree with you. That's a good point. Listen, I do give credit to Keen Chan Sul that she did leave at that point. And again, I want to see her come out one day and speak about it. I want her to speak about why she actually left, the intricacies of the police department, what was happening. I do believe there was some kind of rift between her and Kaz Daughtry as he was moving up through these ranks. I would love to hear it. We were always questioning what kind of commissioner she was. Some people are big fans of her. Honestly, I don't know what kind of commissioner she was, because we never got to see her capabilities and abilities. What I do know is she had the potential. We saw her speak and give testimony at different city council hearings. We've seen her on TV, and she was stoic and professional. That's what I expect for the police department right now. That's completely lacking professionalism. She showed a presence. She did command a presence. She earned respect so we knew she did have the potential. And that's a great point you point out with the corporation counsel. She did say that that he would be indemnified for something that's completely not in the scope. But at some point, maybe she stood up and said, "Listen, we can't do this. We can't see this through." But for her to be removed, that's, like I said, I don't know, but that's what I suspect.
Yeah. And Eric Adams has just sent one of his buddies to follow me on Twitter. Wow, nice, cool. How you doing, Tony? How's it going? You're gonna get your pen ready, get your text ready, because I'm gonna send some stuff over. But yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, I agree with you. I think she exhibited some type of courage, but I'm not a fan of her overall. I'm just not. I don't think, I think we were very critical of her. And she also spread a little misinformation and the cops all bought it hook, line, and sinker when she said she was revamping the disciplinary matrix, and she actually made it worse. And And everyone's
That's a great point.
She did it. And I'm like, we read it. I'm like, oh my God, it's worse.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. If anyone has an opportunity, go back. It's an old episode and see our breakdown of the disciplinary matrix. How it was supposed to be revamped. You're 100% right. It wasn't. It actually didn't affect on-duty work at all. It was all in reference to off-duty employment, just off-duty life. Absolutely nothing was changed. Nothing was revamped. And I heard from independent sources through the police department, "Oh, it's going to change. They're going to make it better." Nothing was changed, and we see it now. Look, Tiffany Caban threw it right at John Shell during the city council hearing. Said, "You were caught giving misinformation on social media. You lied about a judge. You should be terminated based on the discipline matrix." Do I agree with it? But I think it's hysterical and ironic that she threw it right back at him. I can't.
And her line was, what's funny? Her line for crime too was, crime's trending in the right direction, right? They would all say that. I actually have clips of Kemper saying it too. Crime's trending in the right direction. We're seeing crime trend in the right direction. That was the "don't look them in the eyes," all that stuff. That was around that time. So that was her tagline. Then Caban takes over and it's crime's down. Crime's down is the new tagline. It's like, oh, really? Oh, that's funny, because your numbers don't say that. Your numbers don't show that. Nobody feels safe. So I don't know what you're talking about. Crime's up 29% since Eric Adams took office. Great job, guys. You guys deserve all the credit in the world.
That's noisy. But you know what? Let's also talk about. So we're about an hour, 23 minutes into this. We've discussed a lot of information. Before we close, I'd like to talk about this new phenomenon the police department talks about, right? And it's funny how John Shell speaks about it, Kaz Daughtry, mirrors exactly what he's saying, and Kaz Daughtry will say it again, and then Michael Kemper will say it. It's getting nauseating. So first we heard it was perception versus reality, and that line, that messaging is still going out to the public. But the new messaging that we hear, the phenomenon is, well, we're not the only ones responsible for public safety by curtailing crime. There's other stakeholders involved in it. What do you think about that messaging they've been putting out to the public?
I think that they're highly confused. They're highly political confused. Again, Mike Kemper, John Schell, I know you guys are closet Trump supporters, but you're telling everyone, make sure you don't take pictures with Donald Trump. He's going to be in New York City a lot coming up because the judge wants him there. So I know they're closet Trump supporters. So when they start to say there's other stakeholders, okay, I'm going to say exactly what Rosanna Scotto said. Name the names then. If this is your strategy, name the names. No, they'll say the prosecutors, the lawmakers, and the judges, right? They named one name and it was wrong. And so that was the only name that they named because, again, John Schell's not the best character and he doesn't seem to be too smart either. He seems like he's good at attempting to intimidate witnesses. But, other than that, and attempting to smear people, and actually he's not even that too good at that anyway, so I take that back. But what we see is that they'll continue that message. Now, I agree with that message. But here's where they're confused. When we talk about the prosecutors, what do they say? DA Alvin Bragg's my partner. Darcel Clark's my partner. Eric Gonzalez is my partner. Everybody, Melissa Katz is my partner. All 5 borough DAs are their partner. No, they're not. Because if they were, you wouldn't be bringing them up that there are other stakeholders in here. Then, do I agree with them about the politicians? Yes. Now, could they go out and bash everybody? I don't think they could, and I don't think it's smart. But they could bash the legislation. They could let you know what the DA's office did for specific cases. They could act professional. They could act competent, but they don't do that. So instead, they just gaslight you and put this misinformation out there because now it's misinformation because it's not us, it's not you. So why don't you start telling the truth a little bit? That's what I think.
Spot on. That's why I brought it up. Spot on. But that's the way that I see it. I agree that there's other stakeholders of public safety. Should the focus be on the police department? The police department should be the head, the spear of public safety. But yes, there's other stakeholders involved. From families, there's families, there's community, there's church, there's all these factors that play into public safety. There's even real estate. And also the partners of the police department, or who are supposed to be the partners, is the DA offices and the judges. But these DAs, these social justice warrior DAs, they're not partners of the police department. And that's where I think the police department is giving mixed messaging to the public. Taking pictures with Alvin Bragg and saying, he's our partner. At the same time, you're taking a picture while there's an indictment coming down from one of your police officers for doing their job to aid in public safety. As one of your police officers is getting indicted, the potential best candidate you have for law enforcement in this country is facing charges of fraud that's absolutely ridiculous that no one would ever face. So this is just a complete political witch hunt. So for the fact that they could actually lie to the public and say that these are their partners in public safety, and then say the stakeholders are involved. And that's why Rosanna Scotto was saying, say the names. You're taking pictures with them. You're saying these people are partners, but then you're also saying that they're the ones working against you, but you won't say your names because you know the truth.
Yeah, and again, I don't think they should go out on social media and say Alvin Bragg did this and Alvin Bragg did that. No. What I think they should do is let the public know what goes on inside Alvin Bragg's office. Now, do I know that the discovery law hampered these DA's offices the same way it hampered the New York City Police Department? Absolutely, I know that. So why not harp on that law? Why not harp on that too? Say how it hampered you, how it hampered the DA's office. Let people know when the DA's office failed. You don't have to blame it namely on Bragg. Manhattan DA released this person. We arrested him. Here was the evidence we had. Here was the video. Manhattan DA released him. When it actually works, when it's newsworthy and DA Alvin Bragg doesn't decide and it's not a cop or Donald Trump, and he actually goes after a criminal in one of the rare times where he decides to try to prosecute a criminal, and he actually does his job and the judge fails to do their job, then yes, you don't have to call the guy out specifically by name. He went in front of the Fourth Circuit, whatever, blah, 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 and was released. Failure in the judicial system, not a part of the police department. That they could do, but they could do it as professionals instead of like children on social media. That's and use social media, but do it professionally.
Absolutely. Remain stoic, stay professional. And they could actually support their police officers when it comes to civil liability and actual potential prosecution by showing the public that when the public is deceived to believe that, well, this person of interest, this subject that the police department brought to justice, their case was dismissed. And now the police officer has on their 50A a lawsuit that was settled for $150,000. And they say that the case was dismissed. But what they don't tell you, and this is what the chiefs of the police department, if they had good leadership, was telling the public, yes, this case was dismissed, but this case was dismissed because of discovery laws. This case was dismissed because of raise the age. That's where they're missing the mark. But instead, they only care when it's a personal attack, when it's something that bruises their egos. But to actually represent the agency in correlation with public safety, they're not prepared to do that. They don't have the emotional, they don't have the EQ for it. They don't have the emotional IQ to combat these situations. They can only profess their egos. That's it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, when individual police officers or the work of the men and women in the New York City Police Department is under fire, they cower and they say nothing. They either pretend nothing's going on and everything's fine, or they completely cower. So it's like, it's the same thing. They're like, honestly, I at this point, I actually start liking the unions a little bit better than I like the upper echelon. And they don't deserve anything either. Salvatore Provenzano's trial started yesterday. Friend of mine went and said, the board of the PBA was there. There was hardly any cops there. And I believe I believe that's a failure on the part of everybody and all of us and anyone that's still working, especially the guys in his command. I mean, to go there and show support, the CO of that command, I believe it would be on him to gather up and muster up a detail to go and show support and to show the rank and file that, like, listen, we're going to stand behind you. And it's an overall fail on the deputy commissioner of operations. He's been failing a lot lately because, Kaz, you're here to improve the police department is what you said. So you should ensure that when cops are being prosecuted, and I don't even want to say prosecuted, when they're being persecuted for doing their job, that you ensure that people are there to support him. Do you need hundreds of cops? No. But at least some people are there. Stop by, all right? You guys have been eating too much lunch. I could tell lately you're putting a lot of weight on. You should have just went there. You should have walked from 1PP. You could have left your detail of 4 security guards. You could have just walked down there. Barely anybody knows who you are anyway. Don't wear any of your vests and just go to the thing and shake his hand and say, how you doing? If you need anything, let me know, blah, blah, blah. But that's not what's going on in New York City. That's not what's going on. The rank and file of being thrown to the wolves. But it's okay to hide behind them when you want to protect your own ego. So that's how I see it.
It's interesting to me also. So it's been a hot topic with mopeds and scooters. Kaz Daughtry was doing a press conference in the aftermath of a shooting in the Bronx that was relative to scooters. I think there's a gang of perpetrators on scooters. I think they fired 10 to 15 shots. I'm not sure exactly how many shots they fired, but they did hit their mark, and I believe it resulted in a homicide. I'm not exactly sure in the data if it resulted in someone's homicide, but I know there was a shooting, and I know there was a press conference. But what caught my eye was that when they spoke about this press conference, they were talking about how many mopeds and scooters were confiscated. And I mean, the great job. The cops are doing what they're told. They're told to go out and seize these scooters and make these arrests. But what they're not telling the public is, how did this actually correlate to public safety? Were people apprehended? Were they actually potential shooters? Or we just arrested? Are we arrested obliging citizens that have a scooter for purposes of recreation? We need to be targeting the actual persons of interest that are on these scooters. And with that being said, what surprised me the most, and the police officers, their hearts are in the right place. They're out there, their blood's pumping, they're hypervigilant, and they want public safety and they want to do their job. But they're still out there chasing these mopeds and scooters. And I'm just amazed. We see indictments, prosecution of police officers. The last incident involving a moped resulted in the death of the operator of the moped that fled the police. And God willingly, the police don't face any potential prosecution for it. But I can't believe that the cops are still doing this. They're still engaging in this tactic with the amount of critique that they get from the public and this overzealous DA's offices that are just seething at the teeth to actually get your apprehension and to have your indictment, I'm just shocked by it.
I mean, I'm shocked because there's really no room for improvement or movement at this point unless you're up and with the upper echelon. So unless one of them takes a liking to you, you're not moving ahead anyway. So I don't understand why you're going to risk your career, your life, and your freedom. Doesn't really make sense to me at this point either. But, again, like you said, Eric, and you said it many times, and I agree with you. It's easy for us to sit here. We're retired. We say it. Put us in the same scenario, you're probably going to do the same thing. Like it's because their hearts and their hearts are in the right place, but I don't think their minds are. So again, I think that these pursuits are ridiculous. I think you're going to get thrown under the bus any which way they can. I think the only saving grace is last night is that there was a shooting off of mopeds, so you could correlate that as to the reason why you were chasing them. However, New York City doesn't even have a 48-hour memory, so maybe you'll be protected, maybe you won't. But I can tell you, it's not going to protect everybody. It's not. It's just not. And so, is it the delivery guy you're going after? Do you have information this guy has a gun? I mean, and again, I just think the pursuit policy is terrible. It's another John Shell thing, and he's going to run. He's gonna run on you, and we've seen it already. We've seen people get indicted. We've seen, there's guys right now that are on the CRT team that have no idea that their career is over, and they're still going out and making arrests every day. They don't even know what's coming down the pipeline. So, it is what it is. But I listen, I'm not going to knock the rank and file for doing their job. I mean, we need them to do it, right? Everybody needs them to do it, right? You need the guys on patrol answering jobs. It's like DA's not doing anything. The judges aren't doing anything. Our leadership's partying all the time. And, they're doing all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's always going to fall on the shoulders of the New York City Police Department. So, it's just a really terrible time to be a New York City police officer. Probably the worst ever.
I agree. And it's funny, John Shell says the stakeholders, but how about we support the most important stakeholders? Those stakeholders are the rank and file, the actual boots on the ground, the ones that are putting their civil liability, they're putting their financial freedom, they're putting their physical bodies, they're putting their mental health, they're putting their lives on the line every day for this administration, for the residents of New York City. Those are stakeholders that should be getting the ultimate support. It's the police officers that are out there doing the job that you asked them to do. You asked them to confiscate 5,000 moped scooters. If you ask them to do 10,000, they will do it. That's one thing I'll say about the police department. You ask them for 10,000, they'll give you 15,000. These guys will go above and beyond. We did the same thing with there. That's why I don't want to be too critical, because yes, if we were on the job and there's a car that takes off, we're probably going to chase them too. But when we were on the job, we didn't have Eric Dim and John McCary on a podcast giving us advice. We didn't have that big brother that's helping us out. So we're trying to help you out and save you right now, especially back then. They weren't prosecuting cops to this level. We've seen cops get indicted throughout the years, but I've never seen the alarming rate that I'm seeing now throughout the entire country of cops actually getting indicted. But what's scary is they're getting prosecuted and they're actually doing prison time. So you have to think about that. Your mind has to evolve differently. You have to save yourselves. With that being said, I think we covered an array of topics here. Dana Rachel, if you watch this podcast, we'd love to have you on the show and discuss how you've been smeared by the police department and how you've been victimized, being a victim of a sexual assault. I understand it may be scary to speak about it. We're not here to make you uncomfortable. We will show you the ultimate respect. And I just want to talk about how you were smeared. Same thing that we were smeared, and that the pattern of this behavior by the police department is just completely abusive, unprofessional, and they need to be removed immediately. John, anything you want to discuss before we get moving?
No, yeah, I agree. Love to have her on. Love to have Robert F. Kennedy on, or one of his senior advisors, Tramel. If you listen to this, Edwin, you guys come on here too. I'd love to go over all those statements because you guys said you believe in open, fair conversation, and I'm ready to have those conversations. So is Eric. So let's keep that going, and let's see who's strong in their beliefs and who isn't. I mean, it's that simple, And I just That's it. I appreciate everybody for listening. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen. And that's it. Our T-shirts are back on sale at Myers, so I'll put the link down there in the in the description, so you could order it online. Those are the original T-shirts. We're working some on other designs, but honestly, we're so busy and we're not looking to be merchandise people at all. But we do have some merch that we'll get out there. I made some suit pins. I got to get some over to Eric. I'll put those up for sale soon. And all the articles that we talked about will be down in the link. And that's it. Appreciate everybody for tuning in.
Outstanding. New York's Finest Unfiltered Podcast. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.